Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world that we are luckily for us living in. So yeah, another blessing. Every day is a bonus, isn't it? And every day may not be good, but there is some good every day. So your afternoon or your evening, I hope it's a good one. And whatever problems you have, you find a way to solve them. Some problems we can't overcome, can we? But we just have to cope with them. So if you can't overcome them, okay. You know that you're coping okay. So thank you for watching, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing. Please subscribe. It's a very important free way you can help to support my channel. What we're going to talk about in this video, we haven't spoken about him for a while. This is an ongoing case. Gus Lamont went missing quite a long time ago now, didn't he? In Adelaide or in Yunta, which is near Adelaide in Australia. He lived on a huge, vast sheep station and his mum and his little brother. And he just disappeared one day, poof, into a puff of smoke, one of them, beamed up on the Starship Enterprise, it seems. And he was supposedly playing, he was 4 years old, he was supposedly playing on sand, a heap of sand outside his house, outside the main building where they live. And half an hour later, so he was left there to his own devices, a 4-year-old playing on a lump of sand. Half an hour later, when the grandma Shannon, let's have a look at the grandmas. Half an hour later, when the grandma Shannon, the one with the little bobby hat on, the one that always reminds me of Mrs. Pepperpot, she went out apparently to call him in for his tea, and he'd gone poof into a puff of smoke, disappeared. But had he though? Anyway, before I get into this properly, I just want to say thank you to all my members. We're having a members live. No, not tomorrow night. I get my days mixed up. Thursday, members live. So please join if you want to join in that exclusive members live, where we talk about all sorts of things, anything and everything. Also, special thank you to those of you who've sent Ko-fis or bought merch. I keep forgetting about I am honestly in the process of updating my merchandise there on the Ko-fi page. It's mainly going to be mugs and things like that. Thank you to all those of you that have ordered anything. Yeah, and thank you so much for those of you that bought Ko-fis, etc. And my new computer fund, which is virtually there again, was nearly there before, but then things happened car-wise. Anyway, back on track again, and not long to go. So hopefully, not in not too distant future, I will have a new computer and a better streaming experience. Let's hope. So yeah, thank you for those of you who send me emails, leave nice comments. Even if you leave horrible comments, it's still interaction with my channel. It still improves the algorithm apparently. So not that I don't do my channels for the algorithm. I talk about what I find interesting, relevant, important to talk about. And the things that I find especially important to talk about, of course, are these children who go missing, especially the ones that are let down by people, who should know better. who should care about them, like in this case with Gus Lamont. And increasingly, this case, although it's right over the other side of the world, to the case of little Preston, who's the little baby that died in his adopted parents' care. More and more, it's reminding me of this case. Now, we have to remember that the Preston Davey court case is ongoing. It's not been sitting over the bank. It's been bank holiday in the UK. I presume the jury will be back today as soon as I get the update of what happens in the next stage of the Preston Davey monster dads trial. I will, of course, come on and tell you about that. But yeah, this case, of course, is about Gus, little Gus. But it's similar, isn't it? Because he was in the care of people who were supposed to care about him. You know, and Gus was in the care of his biological grandparents, which is Josie and Shannon. So it's even worse, you know, of course, all the cases that you cover on a true crime channel, they're always grim, but they're especially grim when they talk about children disappearing or dying. But also, especially, even, you know, in the worst case scenario, and that is that it is at the hands of someone who's supposed to care about them. You know, this is not some thief in the night, you know, some PDF just rocking up and taking Gus. These are the people who he was entrusted into their care. These are his grandmas, Gmas. Of course, Josie on the left, she's would have been his G-pa, but round about 10 years ago or more now, she transitioned to be a woman in her 60s. She decided she'd always, you know, she's a woman in a man's body. You know, I'm not even commenting on that. Make of it what you will. But it seems strange to me that you suddenly decide that at 60, or it may just be that, you know, society is more forgiving now for people who want to change their gender or feel like they're, you know, in the wrong body or whatever. You know, fair enough, some people are. I'm not having a go at people who decide to do that. But I don't know how this affects a family dynamic. I mean, you've got to wonder, haven't you? So Shannon is Josie's wife for many years. So at some point, Josie has turned around to Shannon and said, oh, well, you know, I know we've been married all these years and we've got a child together, but actually I always wanted to be a woman and I'm going to become a woman. And Shannon has obviously accepted this because they're still living together. Whether they're in any kind of romantic relationship, I have no idea. But at the end of the day, they're living in the same household. So she must have been forgiving, you know. I mean, with the best way in the world, no matter how open-minded you are, it would be a shock when your husband of, I don't know how many years, 30 years or more, comes to you and says, well, actually, all these years I've been married to you, I felt like I was a woman. You know, so it's got to have had an effect on the family. And then his daughter, of course, Gus's mum, and this is her, Jess, don't know how she felt it about it all. She's an only child. This is her and Gus's dad, Josh. Don't know how she felt about it all. But anyway, she was living there at their house with them. She'd split up from her partner, Gus's dad, and she was living at this homestead out in the wilds in Yunta, Australia. She was living there with the two Gmas, with Gus and with Gus's little brother. She's not living there anymore. Anyway, I'm going to tell you why in a moment. So, hello, lovely lurkers. Thank you for watching. Hello, replay group. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for caring about little Gus. It's important. Hi, Daniel. So, yeah, it's important that we, don't shy away from these cases which are unpalatable. I used to, I do try to avoid children's cases. Some cases just get you, like Gus Lamont is very similar to Preston Davy, in my opinion. As I say, a little boy in the care of people who should have loved him, done everything they could to protect him, certainly not left him playing for half an hour. Even if you take the best case scenario that they are actually telling the truth, that's what happened. It's not very responsible, is it? It's like Jamie Varley, the twonk, leaving Preston in a bath on his own for 14 minutes, even though he's just a babe. Preston was just 13 months old. You just think some people, you can't look after a bloody fish, never mind a child. So, so Mrs. Pepperpot, Shannon, she left playing apparently. So, we can only go by what they said, if you like, that happened. Left him playing on the sandpit, in the sandpit, on the pile of sand, 30 minutes, went to call him in for tea, he disappeared. And not a trace has been found of Gus, except one boot print. One boot print was found miles away. There's been several searches. Hey, Julie, it is very crazy, very mysterious. Well, I'll tell you what, I think the police think, and I agree with them, and they've got more reason to think of it than me. Gus is on that property somewhere. They think Gus is on that sprawling property somewhere. But the problem is it's so big, and of course Gus is so little, he'd be easy to hide. So now at first the police went along with the Gmail story, didn't they? They they searched that whole, there's an extra, if anybody's ever brought to account for this crime, the amount of resources that have been wasted, as it turns out, looking for Gus all over this property in the surrounding areas, difficult conditions because the sand blowing up in it, dust blowing up in everybody's face, and even the rescuers got lost driving around, got disorientated. That's how, so it'd be easy if a little boy did wander off, it'd be easy for him to feel disorientated and get lost. But there were no other tracks except for this one boot print, planted, I wonder. That straight away I thought that boot print was planted. You don't just find one print. And of course, the other similar case that this one reminds me of is the Jack and Lily Sullivan case. I think evidence has been planted there, boot prints and bits of Lily's blanket. They're all planted to make things, and this happened shortly after that. And I think, do you think they got an idea from that to plant the boot print? Anyway, so this went on for quite a long time. Searches. One thing you can honestly say is the law enforcement, they have tried their best to find Gus on that property, on that sprawling outback property. Then bombshell. Earlier on this year, I think it was February, sometime around then, the police announced that Gus's disappearance was a major crime. They did not think he had wandered away. They had no evidence to say he had wandered away. Nothing had been found. They had the clothes he was wearing haven't been found. The hat he was wearing haven't been found. no remains, you know, because obviously if he had wandered off, he would have been dead quite quickly. You know, there's always that hope in the first few days, isn't there, that he may have fell over or had an accident and they may find him. And then, of course, as time goes on, it's realised that he couldn't still be alive, but, you know, they may find him, you know, they may find his remains. And then, you know, I think as time went on, and then there must be other enquiries that they've got other reasons for thinking it's a major crime. I think not just because they can't find Gus. I expect there's other reasons why they think that it's a major crime. Anyway, so they announced that they thought it was a major crime. There was no evidence that he'd been abducted. There was no evidence that he'd walked away of his own accord. There were inconsistencies in the stories they were being told. They've never named anybody, really. But I'll tell you how the police got around it. What they said was, let me show you. They announced they had a suspect, but they didn't say who it was. But they did say who it wasn't. So that is telling in itself, isn't it? Because they announced, let me find the photo of the parents. I just had it a moment ago. So yeah, they announced publicly that they had a suspect, but although they didn't say who the suspect was, this is who it wasn't. So announced publicly, the parents, Josh and Jess, they are not suspects. So they're cleared. They are cleared as far as the law enforcement are concerned. Well, that only leaves two people, the two GMAs, who are probably in it together. So anyway, of course, they denied all responsibility. They've taken, they've lawyered up, separate lawyers. They've got separate lawyers. As far, I mean, we don't really know where they are now. Are they still at the homestead, or have they left there and gone to live somewhere else? Are they still living together? You know, we don't really know those ins and outs of things. But anyway, what we do know is they're denying that they had anything to do with the disappearance of Gus, which of course they would, because Gus has not been found, has he? So this is the problem here. There's obviously not enough evidence to arrest them yet. And they're looking, you know, they need to find Gus's remains so they can find his cause of death. Now, it's making me wonder, you know, what, as I say, this trial of Preston Davey, the terrible, I mean, when they find Gus, even if they found Gus tomorrow, they're not going to find the same evidence that they found on Preston Davey's body, because Gus, sadly, I think it was September he went missing, or end of August, early September sometime. There won't be, you know, just being honest, it's going to be skeletal remains, isn't it? Unless for wherever he's been stored, he is preserved in some way. You know, it's going to be much more difficult to do an autopsy on Gus to establish cause of death, unless there's something, you know, blatantly obvious, like a bullet hole, or, you know, a knife. Sometimes they can tell with stabbings, can't they, because of marks on the bones and things like that. But the sort of injuries that they found on Preston Davey, like the bruising to the back of the throat, etc., those kind of things, any injuries on the soft tissue will have disappeared probably, even if they found Gus tomorrow, which there's no guarantee that they will find him. But the reason I'm doing this video is because they're back there again. So the police had made this clear that they had a suspect. It wasn't Gus's parents, so clearly it was one of these two ladies. And now I think then in the end the police said, you know, they're both suspects because their stories don't add up. So this they've given conflicting information about the last time Gus was seen and what the situation was. So as I said, the sort of official thing they're saying is Shanann was looking after the two boys, Gus and his baby brother. I don't know where Josie was supposed to be. She was supposed to be off somewhere with Jessica. But I mean, how does Gus's mum feel about the fact that her own parents are number one suspects in the case of her son disappearing? Now, she's been exonerated, so where was she? You know, it's so we probably won't get to the bottom of it until there's actually an arrest made, the exact timeline that the police happened. So at the moment, they can only go by what the GMAs are saying, and they've apparently given conflicting evidence as to the last time seen, etc. That's the other reason that the police have declared that this is a major crime and they think something bad has happened to Gus. And these women are responsible. At least one of these women, and probably both of them, is complicit in Gus's disappearance. And it makes you wonder, is it a similar sort of scenario to Preston Davey? Was there some sort of abuse going on that, I don't know, resulted in little Gus's death, just like it did with Preston Davey? You know, allegedly, of course, because the trial's still going on. So we always have to say innocent till proven guilty. And I just want to make it clear, because some people have challenged. I'm not saying that I think they're innocent. I'm saying they're innocent till proven guilty. That is a fundamental thing in our society, you know. So doesn't mean to say I think they're innocent. I'm not, you know, I have my own views, but I'm not on the jury. Anyway, so similar with Gus. I mean, even these GMAs, they are innocent till proven guilty. They've not even been charged or arrested yet. So having said that, Josie, the GMA who transitioned from a man to a woman, she was arrested, wasn't she? She was arrested a few weeks ago, and she's up in court actually in June, at the beginning of June. She was supposed to be up in court a couple of weeks ago, but she changed the venue. She asked for the venue to be changed because on one of the searches that the police have made on this property, they found a silencer or a you know, some that fitted on one of her guns, because she's got several guns, and these, it's a silencer or a muffler, and they are illegal in Australia. They are illegal to possess, and the police found this in one of the searches. It fits on one of Josie's guns, so they arrested her, and it's quite a hefty, can lead to quite a hefty prison sentence for owning this illegal piece of equipment. And, you know, I don't know what Josie has said, why she would have it. Some people have left comments saying that people often in these rural communities will have a muffler because when they shoot snakes or I don't know, whatever, so that it doesn't reverberate across, you know, the whole sort of way. Because when I would imagine sound travels pretty fast, doesn't it, in rural properties like this? So even if a gunshot was heard from, you know, the neighbours, which are miles away, they might still hear it, a normal gunshot, because of the just that sound travels, doesn't it, in those kind of places. So yeah, so Josie is awaiting. She's been charged. She was arrested. She was charged. She's awaiting the hearing and see what happens. She could get jail time just for having this silencer. The other thing that showed us what sort of person Josie was, because obviously we don't know her personally. Quite frankly, I'm glad I don't know this woman personally, because then the Daily Mail reporter, remember, turned up at the property, and which must be irritating. But Josie's way of dealing with it was going to the door with a pump action shotgun. I mean, come on. Don't answer the door to someone who's irritating you. Don't go running out there with a pump action shotgun, do you? You know, I'm sure the Daily Mail reporter was irritating, but talk about overkill or, you know, overreaction. It's just not something you do, is it? So she is an aggressive woman, as I don't care what anyone says. I know she's under a lot of stress, so she would have been under a lot of stress. Now we know that she's now a suspect in the disappearance of her own grandson. So no wonder she was under stress. But running out at a Daily Mail reporter with a pump action shotgun is just not acceptable, is it? And she also had the bullets with her. I don't know if it was loaded, the gun itself, but she had the bullets with her to load it. Now, she said afterwards, oh no, she just had the gun with her. It was just coincidence that she had the gun on her person because she was going to shoot a rattlesnake that was on the porch. So that leads to all sorts of questions, even if you presume that's true. Did she just leave a gun lying around? Had she shot snakes on the porch before? Is that what happened to Gus? Was he shot by accident? Did he find one of her guns and decide to play cowboys and Indians or whatever and, you know, accidentally shoot himself? Or is he a victim of abuse like allegedly Preston Davy is? And did she go too far? Did he die by accident and they have spent all this time trying to cover it up? We don't know. All we know is the police have said, in their opinion, Gus is dead, and these grandparents, one way or another, are responsible for his death and fabricating stories as to what happened. And there's been various inconsistencies. Now, that's quite unusual for the police to come out and say that, isn't it? You know, before anyone's been arrested or charged of that offence. So particularly in Australia, as we've found, the police keep things very close to their chest until they're ready to talk about them. Anyway, that's where we are with this case. So you know, every now and again, I try and do an update if there is one. You know, the problem is the cases that we're following, that we're interested in, I can only do updates when there are actually updates. Like Nancy Guthrie, there hasn't really been any proper updates. There was a pajama found today, apparently, and police, but we don't even know if that hand's pajama top. So, you know, I find with the Nancy Guthrie case as well, though I am going to do an update on it, even if there is nothing to update. Just, you know, it's important to keep people's names in the forefront, that we haven't forgotten about them. When we start covering a case, we stick with it to the end, whatever that end might be. So, and we're going to do that with Gus. So, but there is news this morning, as I was just sort of going through. Every day I go through all the news about all the cases that we're covering, or look at, say, all the news, if there is any. Quite often there is no new developments, but there are. So apparently it's been raining over there in Yunta, and the police have taken advantage of that fact to go back to the homestead to do more searching, because I presume they're thinking that the rain might have dislodged some sort of evidence that gives them, and they've done this before, and they said as soon as they declared this a major crime, they said they will be going back again and again. They're not going to give up looking for Gus. So they think he's somewhere there, don't they? And I agree, because where else can he be, really? I mean, it's a big place and he could be anywhere on that homestead. But they must have looked at, I don't know, I don't know what evidence they've got for thinking that. But I think it's probably likely, that he is somewhere close by. But just the fact that he's only little and then as well, because we don't really know exactly when Gus disappeared, do we? We don't, did he disappear on that day that they said he disappeared, or had he been disappeared for a while? I think he was seen in town not long before, and presumably his mum saw him at some point. But I would be very interested in knowing, when the last person saw him who was not the GMARS, and how long did they have to hide his little body. And even if they hid it in a hurry like the first time, did they, because it would have taken a while for the police to get a search warrant for the house and this, that, and the other. Did they move his body? I mean, he would be easy to move, God bless him. He'd be easy to hide, and then he'd be easy to move to another hiding place just because of the size of him. So this is what the police are up against. It feels like they're determined to find him. Feels like they're certain that he is there somewhere, because they keep going back. And that's what's happened now. So let me just read for you then what's all the news has been this morning. Police sweep the property again. Let's just put up this article. Oh, no, I've put the wrong one up. Sorry. There it is. So it's a 3-day sweep. 3 days. And as I say, they've done it before after rain and things. So they're hoping. Let me just put that other one. Yeah. So I think they're going to keep going back and doing this until, they find him, and hopefully they will find him. Let me know what you think. Do you think they ever will find him? Do you agree with the police that he is there somewhere? It's just a question of where. Hi, David. Good morning. So, Gus Lamont search. Detectives launch 3-day sweep of the Outback property after rain. And they say that the rain has created new opportunities, and they will be at the remote station for 3 days. So here he is, this beautiful boy, and that haunting video that his mum released of him on his little bike. He's he's a beautiful boy with his long curly blonde hair. Apparently he was wearing this hat when he disappeared. So where is that hat? It's got to be somewhere. I mean, if he wandered off, the hat will be somewhere. I mean, there was talk in the first days, wasn't there? Was it possible, had an eagle taken him, or any sort of wild animal or whatever? But even then, you normally get some remnants. It's unusual for an animal to take a child and you not find anything. Of course, the dingo, the Lindsay Chamberlain thing was an exception, wasn't it? But that was a baby. I mean, surely even if a predator would have got Gus, his hat would have come off or something. Anyway, so his hat has never been found. So that obviously, wherever that hat is, I mean, it could have been burnt by now. I mean, they've had plenty of time to burn it. But that wouldn't there be some evidence of that on there? But anyway. So police have returned to a remote station in a renewed search for missing 4-year-old August Gus Lamont, who vanished 8 months ago. On Tuesday, South Australia Police confirmed officers are back again at Oak Park Station to search numerous locations over the next 3 days. So I think it's important to remember how sprawling this property is. It's got outhouses, it's got a sheep shearing station. You know, it's not just like searching my house, you know, or maybe your house, unless you live somewhere like that. You know, it's not a simple task. So the renewed effort comes after recent heavy rain across the property, and these conditions, the police say, may have created new opportunities to potentially locate evidence. Oh God, I hope so. I hope so. So apparently on March the 1st, Junta and the Outback region received 129 millimetres of rain in a single day. So major crime detectives and specialist SDAR group officers will be joining this 3-day investigation. So this photo here gives you a little bit of an idea, you know, what they're up against. I mean, it's just huge, huge. Hi, Lily, morning. You know, exactly, David. It could be anywhere in that area. So it literally is like looking for a needle in a haystack. You know, tiny, it could be buried somewhere. Well, but the rain hopefully will help. Will it uncover a burial ground? Where are the GMARs? Where are they actually staying now? Are they staying together? You know, you wouldn't want Josie living next door to you, would you? Bloody hell. I'd be terrified if I had Josie living next door to me. I think she looks scary. She is scary. She's aggressive. You know, she's got a lot of weapons. And she's, you know, could be desperate, you know. So I'd be very scared of being around Josie. And I don't know if Shanann is still sticking by Josie, or are they living separately now? Because I'll tell you what, if I was Shanann, I wouldn't want to be with Josie. You know, what is it? You know, just in case she feels like, you know, topping herself and taking Josie with her, taking Shanann with her. You wouldn't put it past her. I wouldn't put anything past her. She's a very scary woman. You know, and she may have transitioned to be a woman, but she still looks like a man to me. Sorry, but she does. So Gus was last seen playing outside the homestead while his grandmother cared for his younger brother inside. And despite one of the largest land searches in South Australian history, involving drones, mounted officers, SES volunteers, police dogs and aircraft, the only trace ever found was a single small footprint about 500 metres from the house. You know, that's definitely planted, I think, that footprint. How would you just find one footprint? You know, was it just put there just to confuse people? So yeah, the case was later declared a major crime, and the police indicated they had a suspect who resided at Oak Park Station. And Police Commissioner Grant Stevenson said investigators had ruled out Gus having wandered off. Yeah, so it's funny the way they announced it, wasn't it? Because they wouldn't give a name for the suspect. They wouldn't say who the suspect was, but then they said who it wasn't. So it's like, you know, you talk it. There's four people living at that property. 3 adults living at that property. There's only 3 people living there. And the police said, yeah, we've got a suspect. We're not saying who it is. And then they said, but it's not Gus's mum. So that only leaves two. So it's one GMAR or the other one, isn't it? And then eventually the police have said that it is both of them. Because their stories are inconsistent. That's why the police keep going back and interviewing people, isn't it? Because if somebody's telling the truth, their story never changes, does it? Now, there are things you wouldn't be clear about, if my son, he's gone away to, I say gone away, he stayed at a friend's house last night. So now, supposing he went missing, I mean, I don't want to wish it on him, but, I think I'd be, they'd probably say to me, or, when you last saw him, what was he wearing, or blah, 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 blah. I would be struggling to remember, so there are some things that you're not going to be dead clear about, and I don't dress my son, he's an adult. If he dressed a baby or a young child, maybe you would be clearer about what they were wearing. But what I'm trying to say is, if you're telling the truth, there might be things you're not clear about, but you wouldn't be clear about them from the beginning, so, but the thing is, your story would never change. So if then you're interviewed in another 3 months about the same thing, it'd be the same, wouldn't it? Whereas if you're telling porcupines, you've sometimes forgotten exactly what you've said in the first instance. And that's a police tactic, isn't it, to keep going back to people and re-interviewing them and see if they say the same thing or not. And just a little aside, so I thought, oh great, yesterday, I took my son over to his friend's house. Came back, oh great, I don't know, it sounds awful, but anyone who's got an adult child living with them will know exactly what I mean. It is nice. And it was nice for me not to have to do any more driving because he's had a few days off. So I spend a lot of time driving him to work and picking him up. And then so I got home, I'm like, oh, relax. And then next minute, phone's ringing. Oh, I think I've left my wallet in the car. So I had to go all the way back there. Oh, my God. Just go all the way back there. He needed his wallet. Of course he needed his wallet, but there was nothing else to do. And I thought, oh my God, there you go. There's another hour's driving. But anyway, these are the kind of things that happen, aren't they? But what I'm trying to say is I remember that. And if somebody asked me that story in a month, like what happened, I'd be saying, oh yeah, I took him, dropped him off at his friends, came all the way home. As soon as I'd walked him through the door, he's on the phone saying he's left his wallet in the car. So, I would remember that. I don't have to remember anything because it's not true. But if I was telling a little lie there, maybe then the next I was interviewed by the police the next time, I might have a different version of what had happened that day, or I might not remember the exact details, because of course the police will ask you things like, so I'm presuming if the GMAR goes to the police and says, oh, he was playing outside on the sandpit, now it was the day of the NFL league, wasn't it? I do think these sort of things often happen on important dates, don't they? So it was the day of the final of the Australian football or something like that. So it makes you wonder, were they just, there's various things that could have happened. It may have been a genuine accident. It may be that they were so busy watching the football, they didn't take enough care looking after little Gus. But then if it was an accident, why didn't they ring the authorities and get an ambulance out there? Or, that's what makes you think it's not an accident. The fact that they've covered it up, because if it was an accident, would you cover it up? You shouldn't, should you? It's not, what you're trying to hide. So anyway, that was the story. So the police will have interviewed them probably several times. What time was it? Did you leave him? Do you last remember seeing him playing in the sand? What did you do when you came back into the house and just left him there? What was the exact time that you went back out and noticed he was missing? They'd be asking all that. What did you do? Where did you look? They'll be asking all those questions over and over again. And when they get inconsistencies, which apparently in Gus's case they did get, and that's why they've ended up calling it a crime, inconsistencies when they've gone back and re-interviewed these GMAs. So it's... Anyway, so there has not been one single piece of evidence that we have located during that searching exercise, the most extensive search, I think, arguably in the history of South Australia, that has given us any indication that he did wander off. Gus's parents, Josh and Jess Lamont, who are not suspects, and they made it clear they are not suspects, have continued to cooperate with investigators and have repeatedly appealed for information. Two family members, Gus's grandparents, Josie and Shannon Murray, are cooperating via their legal representatives. So let's not forget that the reason police declared it a major crime in the end was because they stopped cooperating. So probably what happened was they were cooperating as long as they felt their story was being believed. We've seen this happen in many cases. And then suddenly when things aren't adding up for the police, so police start pressing a little bit further, these people, they stop cooperating then, don't they? Because they know they've not been believed anymore. So they stopped cooperating and immediately lawyered up. Now, you just don't do that if you've got nothing to hide. So there he is, darling little Gus. Oh my God, please God, let them find something that leads to some justice for him. I mean, Gus isn't coming back. Gus is gone. Very sad, but probably at the hands of someone who's supposed to have loved him, cared about him, his grandparents. It's just, you just can't imagine it. I mean, I've not been fortunate enough yet to have grandchildren, but if I had a grandchild, could you imagine hurting your grandchild, or any child, at the end of the day? How could you? And then cover it up and then leave that. So that, let's not forget that Gus's mum, Jess, she will be in absolute torment, and his dad. But, I suppose the GMAs don't have to care about the dad. Apparently they didn't like him very much. It's just, they didn't think he was good enough for their daughter. But you know what? He wasn't a child killer, was he? Anyway, but they're putting their own daughter through this torment. Not only their grandchild that they've allegedly done something to, and if not, the best case scenario, it was an accident and they're covering it up. But not only that, what they're doing to their own daughter. So their own daughter is not only having to cope with her son going missing and probably dead, but the fact also that it's her own parents that are probably responsible for it. And they're not telling her, not even giving her the dignity of some closure about what happened or some resolution, to even know what happened to her little boy. It's the foulest of crimes. And then you add on top of that, the wasted resources and, just I just hope, please God, that something is found that leads to someone should be, where's my, going to my members in emojis now. Well, I think somebody should be in. Let me put them up there. First of all, somebody already should be in handcuffs, and then they need to go to jail. Well, sooner or later they will be going to. Accident. What they're just, they're just selfish. So selfish. I mean, they're well into their 70s. What, they're worried about going to prison for the rest of their life? They've had a life. They've had a life. They've got to be in their 70s. Little Gus didn't even make it to 5 years old. Selfish, and to torture their own daughter by not telling her what's happened. Absolutely foul people, I